Welcome back. Convicted. Former President Donald Trump has made history as the first American president to be found guilty of a crime after a jury of 12 New Yorkers found him guilty in the hush money payment scandal with Stormy Daniels on all 34 counts.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace.
As expected, former President Donald Trump is defiant amidst the charges. We'll take a deep dive into what exactly this case revolved around. We'll talk about how this case's results impacts the 2024 election, how it impacts Joe Biden, how it impacts Donald Trump, what people are saying about it, and so much more. We'll be taking a look at all those stories today, June 2nd, 2024. From Ishan Media, this is the Ishan S. Show, a podcast about the interesting and ever-changing world of American politics. With me, your host, Ishan. Welcome back to the Ishan S. Show. Thanks for joining us. It's been a while, hasn't it? But don't worry, we are back, and I think now the schedule is going to become a little more regular. Episodes might be on Tuesdays and Fridays now, so that's some exciting news right there. But I want to get right into today's top story, which I'll start with this. On the show, every time I've opened it to talk about something that's in the news, I've always said, and I've often said, for that matter, that this is historic, this is big, and every time it seems to top the last story. And once again, we are in a position where the story of the day somehow has topped every other thing I've probably talked about on this show. And today's story, as you heard at the top, is that former President Donald Trump has been found guilty in his hush money trial. That is monumental. I'm not even going to take the time to, push around and beat around everything. It's a big deal that a former president of the United States has been found guilty, has been convicted of a crime. Never in the history of this nation has that happened. And before we get too far into the analysis, I know this is a question that's going to come up a lot, so I'm going to answer it right now. Because Donald Trump has been found guilty, he is not going to be ineligible to run for president. He can still run, and he most certainly is. The only requirements in the American Constitution to run for president are that you are 35 years old, that you've been a resident for 14 years, and that you were born in this country. That's it. If you meet those three qualifications, regardless of whether or not you can even vote for yourself, because felons can't vote for themselves in the jurisdiction where they are felons, you can still run for president. Okay, so glad we got that out of the way. So let's first talk about the details of this case, because I don't think I've talked about that stuff in, I guess, over a year, because the last time we talked about this case was right when Trump got indicted, and that was the first indictment, actually, of all the indictments he's had, and it was a pretty big deal, because, look, in simple, short summary, he had an affair with an adult film star, Stormy Daniels, and it was something that he kept under wraps. It was back in 2006, and it was right after Melania Trump had their youngest son, and they weren't really, talking about it too much, and Trump really wanted to keep it under wraps. So there were some, NDAs and whatnot signed. Now, the story was about to come back up right around the 2016 election. This was when Trump was against Hillary Clinton. And that's where the main substance of this case occurred. And what happened was, essentially, the charges that were then levied against him, the crimes that we're talking about, is that Trump was found guilty of falsifying business records related to hush money payments that he facilitated right before the 2016 election. So he essentially paid off Stormy Daniels to stay quiet about the 2016 or about the affair that he had 10 years prior with her. Now, the payment in itself was not necessarily the issue, because you know what, with NDAs, with all these types of things where big people want to keep stuff secret, they sometimes do pay off, and they sometimes do have a monetary value assigned to it. So the hush money itself was not the problem. The problem came from how the money was given. The problem came from then also covering up the actual affair. It was also about the dirty ways in which it was done. Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, who no longer works for him, has not worked for him for a long time, was said to have facilitated a $100,000 plus payment to Stormy Daniels as a way to keep her silent right around October. And I want to take us back to October. This was when Trump had his worst moment as a presidential candidate in the 2016 election. Politically speaking, it was when the Access Hollywood tape was leaked, where he said some inappropriate ways of interacting with women. I'll just put it that way. I'm not going to play the clip here on the show because we're still very PG. But essentially, it was bad press, and there were points at which they were calling on him to drop out. Mike Pence, his running mate at the time, was disgusted by this. And then the Stormy Daniels stuff was about to be reported when it was, caught and it was stopped. So there was a lot of situational information that was necessary that was then opened up in the trial, and the person that brought the stuff about the Access Hollywood tape crisis and how it related to this hush money payment came from Trump's former communications official, Hope Hicks. She's not necessarily been in the greatest graces of Trump, but she still was there, and she still testified against him. And she explained that the Access Hollywood tape stuff, that was all there, that was all, taking place, and this is when they decided to make the hush money payment. Michael Cohen, who, by the way, is actually a person who's been convicted himself of perjury. He did lie in testimony. He also offered testimony. And he talked about the actual payment. He talked about what was running through Trump's mind. And what came of that, and Michael Cohen has been a big part of this case since the beginning, since 2018 when the investigation was launched. Because this investigation, mind you, was opened way back when, in 2017 or 18. I can't remember what year right now, but 2017 or 18, it was when it was launched. And that was when Trump was president. So it was launched and the investigation began, and Michael Cohen became a really big part of it. He even testified in front of Congress where he ended up lying about some things. But anyway, Michael Cohen was the star witness, and his testimony, the jury said during the announcement of the verdict, they said that Michael Cohen's testimony was what put the nail in the coffin for Donald Trump. Of course, there was also Stormy Daniels, who also then testified on the stand. She wasn't necessarily a star witness. She came the week before Michael Cohen. Stormy Daniels described the encounter with Donald Trump, which went too graphic in some cases, but that's okay, I guess, because that's what her lawyers told her to do. One thing led to another. So I guess the last time I made an episode was for the State of the Union address, and I made the State of the Union address episode, and then I think that's right when the case started. So since March, this case has been going on, and the trial, that is, has been going on, and we've been watching how this has unfolded. Actually, no, this didn't start in March. It started in April, my bad. But it's been going on since then, and we've been watching 7 weeks how this has turned out. So we had all that testimony from Hope Hicks, from Stormy Daniels, from Michael Cohen. And so then the jury broke for deliberation, I think, on Wednesday of this week. Wednesday, and analysts were saying, like, we don't think there's going to be that much of a result. We don't think that the jury's going to come out with a while. They were also saying that it might end up being a hung jury, where the jury cannot agree on a verdict. Or they were saying it would be a mixed verdict, where some are guilty, some are whatnot, So we were really surprised observing, the people that were observing, we were really surprised when we saw that on Thursday, so only about after 12 hours of deliberation starting on Wednesday, the jury said, we have a decision. And I think the reason, so they announced that at around 3 o'clock Central, so 4 Eastern, and it was a way to tell the judge, don't pack up for the day, we have a decision, so please wait for us. And at 5 o'clock Eastern is when the jury then read the verdict. And I remember watching it, and I remember listening to Jake Tapper on CNN read us the verdict right from the courtroom, because there were no cameras in that courtroom. So we were just getting whatever the reporters were sending. And Jake Tapper was saying, on count 1, guilty. On count 2, guilty. Count 13, guilty. Count 18, guilty. Count 25, guilty. Guilty, 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 until he came to count 34. And he was brought up with only 34, well, not only, that's still a lot, but he was brought up with 34 charges relating to, falsifying business records, hush money, cover up, and whatever else. There was a lot that went into this. And they said he was guilty. And that was shocking. I remember watching that and thinking, my God, that is literally the craziest thing ever, that a former president of the United States has been found guilty of a crime. First time in American history. And, I mean, hopefully, I sure hope it's the last. But yes, we now have that in the books. And we've never had a situation like this. So we don't know what to say of things going forward. But there is one person that knew exactly what to say. And that was the judge. The judge thanked the jury. Judge Juan Merchan thanked the jury. He thanked all the lawyers and then dismissed everybody because he was probably finally relaxed. He put gag orders on Trump, faced a lot of pushback from Republicans and conservatives. And so, that's what happened. Now, there was only one person other than everyone else that was caught off guard, and that person was Donald Trump. There were reports that the same day on Thursday, he was enjoying pizza, he was talking to his lawyers, they were laughing, and then the moment the jury said that they have a verdict, Trump froze. He was literally frozen, and that's how they were describing it. He was frozen, and he could not move, because he was listening to that verdict so closely, and he must have been shocked. So right after the verdict comes, him and his legal team begin to scramble to get something, and they try to get something prepped for a statement for the cameras. And Trump did what Trump does, and he complained about everything that didn't work his way being rigged. So here's a clip of the former president right after his guilty verdict.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble. But this was a rigged decision right from day one, with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
He was quite upset, but I have to state, good journalism, I guess, but I have to state for the record that Joe Biden had nothing to do with this case, because this was a Manhattan District Attorney Office's case. So any allegations that Joe Biden is somehow trying to interfere with the election by having this all happen, this whole trial, is wrong. But beyond that, there could be questions of politically motivated charges. Sure, you could even say that. But the beauty of this country is that we have a jury system. That means a jury of random members of your community or random members of the jurisdiction where you've committed a crime. It's people that did not ask to be on a jury. They are called up and they sit and they're the ones that make the decision. It is everyday people, people like you, people like me. They're not people like Donald Trump. They're not people like Judge Merchan. They are everyday people that make a decision. And so any question about this being rigged, maybe to influence a jury, but ultimately the jury made their decision on the charges. They made their decision on the testimony. Trump even complained about not being able to testify in his own case. That's wrong. He had an option to, and his lawyers even suggested it, but he didn't because he knew it wouldn't work that well for him. But he's going around complaining about all these things when in fact they're just not true. And so that's what's going on with that. That was the immediate reaction. What happens next is sentencing. Now that he's guilty, he is going to be sentenced. And that sentencing is scheduled for July 11th, where the former president will remain out of prison or remain out of whatever the charge or whatever the the sentencing might be. And funny thing is, he might actually be put in one of the most rough prisons in New York if the judge decides to do that. Now it's up to the judge. Although there is an appeals process, and Trump is likely going to appeal his conviction, and that could delay the sentencing for a bit. But as of right now, with July 11th, that is about 1 week before the Republican National Convention. That is around the time Trump is going to be picking a vice presidential candidate. So it's not going to be a good time in the press for Trump. On one hand, he has celebration. On the other hand, he has conviction. And I think it's going to be quite a burden for Trump in terms of being a candidate. Anyway, as for what we've seen in terms of how Joe Biden has reacted, Joe Biden has said, I have nothing to do with it. This isn't my problem, and this is just the legal system. So, and that's just pretty much been all Democrats. They've all said that this is just how it is. Now, the Republicans have been a little more lively about it. You have your general people, your general MAGAs that are all about how this is a politically motivated crime, or the crime being the prosecution itself. They're saying Trump is being persecuted by being prosecuted. Vivek Ramaswamy says that. He thinks he's so clever. Then there's people like Mike Johnson, respectable officials who've worked their butts off that are now coming to kiss the ring. Mike Johnson actually sat during one of the days of the trial to show his loyalty to Trump. He issued a statement saying that this is a sad day for America Thursday was a sad day for America because a former president was found guilty of crimes. I know it is kind of a sad day that a former president was found guilty of crimes. Then we had other Republicans react. We have a lot of vice presidential hopefuls that were really outraged and are now hitting the TV circuit trying their best to win the support and love of Donald Trump so that he picks them as his vice president. And I think actually, if you think about it, a vice presidential candidate for a person like Donald Trump might actually be playing a much bigger role, not because he's old or anything like that, but because if Trump is going to be in a courtroom, or if Trump is going to constantly be warding off legal issues during this campaign, the VP candidate is going to be showing their face a lot more. They're going to be stepping in they're going to be, waiting in the wings for Donald Trump and stepping in and helping out. So I don't think I'm going to be that surprised if the person he picks is going to be one of those more responsible, TV-friendly, and news-filled people. But let's talk about how this impacts the race, because that's what you care about the most. And as for the impact of the 2024 race, there was a poll. I'll start with this. There was a poll. I can't remember what poll or what the pollster was, but there was a poll not too long ago that said 49% of independents want Trump to drop out because of his conviction. 49% of independents. That is huge. But beyond that, if I have my papers here, there's some more polling that says 53% of swing state voters are reluctant to vote for President Trump if he is to be convicted of a crime. In states like Pennsylvania, they say that 1/5 of voters would alter their support of Trump if he were convicted. In states like Wisconsin, they said that, once again, they are going to be impacted by a guilty verdict. So when we look at the politics of this, swing voters and independent voters are not happy with Trump like this. Independent voters are turned off by the legal issues. Swing voters don't think they can trust Trump again. I mean, honestly, swing voters are the ones who delivered this election in 2020 for Joe Biden in states like Arizona and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan. They saw Trump and they said, I just don't trust this guy anymore. I have to go back to Biden. It doesn't help because the burden was on Trump this election to get these voters to trust him again. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work if you are a convicted felon now, to get these people to now back you again. So swing voters and independent voters are upset with this. And I have a really good feeling that a segment of the Trump base that's not been too crazy about him, I'm thinking your Nikki Haley supporters, who, by the way, Nikki Haley, we have to talk about Nikki Haley in another episode for sure, because she made quite a big flip-flop, but we'll get to that another day. Anyway, but your Nikki Haley supporters that are more moderate, that don't want to support Trump, they're not going to be backing him. I really don't think they want to turn out to vote for a convicted felon. And in swing states where, like I said, 1 in 5 voters in Pennsylvania said they're not interested in voting for someone like Trump now. Or how 53% of swing voters said that they are uncertain about voting for Trump. Or how there are 49% of independents that say they will not back Trump because of this. I've talked to people in politics, politicians as well as voters alike, independents and swing voters, who tell me that they're not interested. And so when we're looking at a polling dynamic between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, where Joe Biden has been lagging behind in the polls, I think Joe Biden is going to stay at his 42 to 45% range. Donald Trump, though, might drop from his comfortable lead to probably a deficit. There are going to be people that maybe won't vote for Joe Biden, but I know they're not going to come out to vote either. And this might actually... And if the press stays on this, then I think it might actually work out for Joe Biden. There's a debate on June 27th, a presidential debate that day. I think it's being hosted by CNN. Oh, I forgot. There's a debate in 25 days that we're going to watch. We'll have full analysis of that too. But they're going to ask those questions, and then they're going to ask the questions at the September ones. They're going to ask these questions at the vice presidential ones. They're going to ask these questions all the time now, and Trump is going to have to answer for that. And he can play his macho confidence and try to play it off, but you can only go so far with that. And he can only play it off in a certain way for so long, or even just play it off in a certain way. After a while, it just doesn't work. That's all to say that Trump supporters are still very much diehard supporters, the vast majority. And who knows? Maybe Trump can pull a surprise and we might see his polling go up. Who knows? But as of right now, the numbers and the data shows one thing, and one thing only. That this is not good. This is not a good week for Donald Trump. This is not good news. Donald Trump wanted a win. He needed a win. He would have even won if he was found partially guilty. So if, say out of the 34 counts, maybe 20 were found guilty and 14 were not guilty, even that could have been turned into a win. But he was found guilty on all 34 charges. And so that is just where we find ourselves. Unfortunately for the country, we are going to deal with this for at least until November. If Trump wins, who knows what. If Joe Biden wins, also who knows what. So that's just going to keep people like me in a job, I guess. But as for you, just be prepared to be listening to this story a lot more over the next few months and weeks. But that is what we have for today's show. Thank you so much for joining us. Add your name to our email list. Follow us on Instagram and all the other platforms. Check out theishaneshow.com. If you're listening to this on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. I know it's been a while, but we'll probably have more daily videos coming soon. And continue to listen to The Ishan S. Show. Take a little time to enjoy The Ishan S. Show. And take a little time to research and learn about politics because it's so important. But yeah, that's all we have for today. We'll see you guys next week.
And so that does it for us here today at The Ishan S. Show. If you like my commentary, then go ahead and follow The Ishan S. Show on Twitter and Instagram for breaking news posts and updates about the show. And if you want to learn more about political stories, then check out my political news blog on theishaneshow.com and go ahead and subscribe to it. Do us a favor and share this episode and all your other favorite episodes with your friends and family. It's the best way for this show to grow and get more people listening to it. Thanks again for all your support, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.